You're responsible for this. My son is barely hanging on, and it's because of you. Karen, your son took my car. If anything, I should be the one filing charges against you." I'd always known Karen existed in a world she'd invented for herself, one that barely overlapped with reality, but I never imagined there would come a moment when her absurd behavior would strip me of everything I'd worked for. It all began the day I brought home my new car, my dream machine, an Audi RS7, a goal I had chased for years. Long nights at the office, extra shifts, vacations postponed, plans layered on top of plans until they finally paid off. When it arrived gleaming, engine rumbling low in my driveway, it felt like life had finally handed me something I'd earned. The neighborhood reacted exactly how you'd expect. Phones lifted for photos. Kids circled it in awe. Grown men gave quiet nods of approval. I soaked in the moment, careful not to gloat. Welcome to Prodigy Tales. Don't forget to like and subscribe for your premium HOA drama fix. That's when I spotted the only person who didn't seem remotely impressed. Karen, president of our HOA, stood rigid near the sidewalk. She wore a tight smile that never reached her eyes, the kind people put on when they're already scheming. Next to her stood her son, Brad, hovering closer than necessary, staring at the car longer than anyone else had. His gaze traced every contour like he was committing it to memory instead of admiring it. I pushed away the uneasy feeling, convincing myself I was overthinking. Maybe he just appreciated good engineering. I'd lived here long enough to know Karen's style. She valued regulations over relationships and authority over logic. Her clipboard might as well have been a weapon, and she collected fines like medals. Even so, never thought a vehicle would ignite something uglier. That night, I parked the RS7 with care, locked it securely, and went inside completely unaware that my purchase had just become someone else's fixation. In the days that followed, murmurs trailed behind me. Some neighbors congratulated me quietly. Others teased that Karen had a personal vendetta against anything flashy. I shrugged it off. Hard work shouldn't offend anyone. I'd reviewed the HOA Guidelines twice. Nothing prohibits owning a high-end car. I was fully compliant. What I failed to understand was that rules stop mattering when envy takes over. Karen didn't crave fairness. She craved dominance. And my car disturbed her balance of control. Before we go further, drop a comment telling us what country or city you're watching from. We'd love to see how far this story reaches. A few days after the purchase, odd patterns began forming around my driveway. Brad was suddenly everywhere. He lingered near the curb whenever I pulled in. He paused his bike ride directly beside my fence. He stared unblinking. Each look felt heavier than simple curiosity. When I washed the R7, he hovered. When I put the cover on, he reappeared later. His questions sounded practiced. How fast can it go? What exact model year? Does it unlock on its own? I answered cautiously, polite, but guarded. Then Karen joined in. She acted as if bumping into me was accidental. It never was. She walked her dog past my house repeatedly. She inspected my trash bins like a detective searching for evidence. One afternoon, she physically blocked my driveway with Brad at her side. Clipboard ready. Smile loaded. She claimed my trash can lid wasn't fully shut. I recognized the playbook. Another fine. Another attempt to assert power. I stayed composed. That was when I decided to park inside the garage first. I had no idea how significant that decision would become. As I drove in, Brad tracked every movement. The garage door lowered slowly. I punched in my code without shielding the keypad. Karen continued, speaking loudly. Brad stood close enough to hear each beep. I didn't give it a second thought. Why would I? He was just a teenager. That assumption would come back to haunt me. Over the next week, his questions sharpened. Was it keyless entry? Do alarms ever malfunction? Do garage systems reset codes on their own? I laughed off some inquiries, ignored others. Karen, meanwhile, grew quieter. No new fines. No confrontations. That silence unsettled me more than her nagging ever had. Neighbors resumed, whispering. Someone mentioned Brad bragging at school. Another joked he'd borrow the RS7 one day. I brushed it aside. I trusted my locks. I trusted my garage walls. I trusted that parents teach their children right from wrong. That trust was misplaced. One night, I checked the garage twice before heading to bed. Everything appeared normal. The car sat peacefully in its space. I went to sleep without worry. I had no idea someone else had studied my security like it was an architectural plan. Then came the HOA meeting that stretched far longer than it ever should have. Exactly the type of gathering Karen thrived on because it handed her absolute command of the room without interruption. She stood at the front, droning on about grass height, driveway positioning, and penalties. No one even remembered receiving. Around the room, neighbors glanced at their phones, exhaled dramatically, and shifted in their seats. But one thing caught my attention. Brad wasn't there, normally. He hovered nearby whenever Karen put on her crown and ruled the floor. This time, his chair sat empty. I brushed it off, figuring he was home, locked into a video game. Halfway through her lecture, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I stepped outside, irritated. The woman on the other end sounded frantic, her words tumbling over each other. She said there had been a major accident involving my Audi. I actually laughed. Told her my car was secure in my garage. There was silence. Then she clarified. The vehicle had been spotted earlier speeding on the highway and was now completely wrecked several miles away. The cold that ran through me was instant. At that exact moment, Karen's phone rang inside the hall. Through the glass doors, I watched her posture crumble. The color drained from her face. Without explanation, she bolted, nearly toppling a chair on her way out. The meeting disintegrated into confusion, but I was already sprinting to my car. The crash site wasn't anywhere near our subdivision. It was far beyond the streets we knew, somewhere Brad had no reason to be. When I pulled up, my RS7 didn't even look like a car anymore. It was mangled around a roadside barrier, front end obliterated, faint smoke curling into the night air. Red and blue lights painted the scene. Onlookers stood whispering. Paramedics moved with urgency. Nearby, Brad sat on the curb, wrapped in a gray blanket, bruised, shaken, staring at the pavement. The officers filled in the gaps. He'd memorized my garage code. The keyless ignition handled the rest. And he hadn't just taken it for a quick spin, he'd driven miles out of town, chasing speed like he had something to prove. Confidence far beyond his ability. He lost control. I stood there, numb, looking at the remains of years of sacrifice twisted into scrap metal. Karen showed up shortly after, hysterical, loud, already assigning blame to the car, the system, the universe, anything except her son. The officers cut her off and began documenting facts. As they gathered statements, one officer mentioned the traffic cameras that tracked Brad's entire route. Karen went rigid. That reaction told me everything. This wasn't ending quietly. Not even close. The next morning, before Brad had even been released, a process server appeared at my door. Karen was suing me. Negligence, unsafe premises, emotional distress, even an absurd claim that I had enticed a minor by owning a luxury vehicle. The paperwork read like satire written by someone detached from reality. She demanded medical expenses, damages, and compensation for trauma. I let out one short laugh. Then I called my attorney. From there, everything accelerated. Police documentation confirmed the car had been stolen. My security footage clearly showed Brad entering my garage. Highway cameras mapped his reckless route, clocking speeds far above legal limits. Witnesses recalled him bragging at a gas station about borrowing an Audi. When subpoenas hit, Karen's confidence vanished. Depositions revealed text messages where she joked about Brad taking the car someday. Emails surfaced showing she'd threatened HOA penalties if I pursued insurance claims. Neighbors who once stayed silent began speaking up. The HOA board placed her under suspension pending investigation. The court Beckham Theater. Karen Trido tear first. Then outrage. Then blamed faulty technology again. The judge was unimpressed. Her lawsuit against me was dismissed decisively. Then came the counterclaims. Insurance covered a portion of the damage, but Karen and Brad were ruled responsible for the remaining balance. Auditors reviewing HOA records discovered financial mismanagement. The board voted unanimously to remove her as president. Brad faced charges: vehicle theft, reckless driving. Karen attempted to frame it as harassment. No one bought it. Restitution stacked up quickly. Legal costs, fines, court-mandated counseling, community service hours. Her image unraveled faster than my engine had. Neighbors stopped greeting her. Conversations ended when she approached. Front doors closed. For the first time in years, the neighborhood felt lighter. Weeks later, I stood in my driveway. The garage sat empty. The RS7 was gone, but something else had taken its place. Peace. Justice doesn't growl like a performance engine, but it hits harder when it lands. Karen lost the authority she worshipped. Brad learned that consequences don't reset like keypad codes. The end. If you enjoyed this HOA showdown, like and subscribe for more stories just like it. Do you think Karen got what she deserved? Let me know in the comments.